Hello and welcome to Develop. My name is Amy Margot and I'm the UK Engagement Coordinator for the Salvation Army International Development UK. This is the first episode of a series of mini episodes that will highlight the different thematic areas that we support. If you're a keen listener, then you may wonder why it's not Ben that is hosting today. Well, that's because I am interviewing him. Ben, thank you for coming on Develop for our mini series for International Development Week. Could you just tell us when is it and what is it all about?
Thanks very much, Amy. Well, firstly, the International Development Week 2020 is the first time that we've had a week like this in the territorial calendar. So it's a really big deal, and it's a great time to celebrate what we do around the world for international development. The dates are the 26th of October to the 1st of November. And it's a chance to reflect on the international work of the Army, just to raise awareness of what we do, and also a chance to find out a little bit more about the way that we work in other countries.
So tell me, how is the UKI territory involved in international development?
Well, as the UKI territory, we are part of a global international Salvation Army, and so we fit into a global structure. But in terms of our own international development for this territory, we divide that up into several themes. The first few are specific to longer-term community development, so that's clean water, income generation, food security, gender justice, and anti-trafficking. Then we've got humanitarian response, which is emergency response and responding to disasters. We also cover all of the international mission support, so those are our mission partners that the UK territory partner with. And also we cover small projects and core-to-core transactions, which are small one-off donations where a core in the UK or an individual from the UK are supporting a small project or an individual core in another territory.
So finally, Ben, can you tell us how people can get involved with International Development Week?
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, well, there's lots of ways that people can get involved. Primarily, it's just to keep up to date with our international development work. And a good way of doing that is through the social media channels. We also release a publication twice a year. That's the Develop magazine. And the Develop magazine highlights stories from around our work in the different themes that we're working in. Part of that is also the Develop podcast, which runs every month, and it focuses on a conversation about how we work internationally in one of the territories that we're working in. You can also dip into the resources on our website, and we have a specific resource page which is going to be released for the International Development Week and is full of interesting ideas and activities and session guides specific to international development. And so you can look that up on our website. A great way to get involved is through fundraising and raising money for some of the work that we do. A good place to start is the Helping Hand campaign, and that runs every single year. This year it is Unseen Promise and focuses on anti-trafficking. And from January next year, we'll be launching Feeding Hope, which is the Helping Hand campaign for food security.
Yes, thank you, Ben. I do have another question. Could you give us an example of what people might be able to do during International Development Week?
Well, specific to the resources, we're conscious that right now a lot of us are still working from home and we're not meeting in the usual ways that we're used to prior to COVID-19. So we've tried to tailor our resources for International Development Week to suit that. And we've actually called them At Home With. So, for example, we have a At Home with Food Security resource, which gives you great ideas and activities that you can do at home with your family, with your children, to highlight issues around food security. And we've got similar resources around each of the themes that we work around.
That's brilliant. Thanks again, Ben, for joining us today. And as Ben said, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram to find updates about what we are doing, not only during International Development Week, but all the other times around that. Thanks again. Goodbye for now.
confusion, hope has slipped away. Men have stopped believing, forgotten how to pray. If we needed you, we need you now. Come into our world, oh come now, Lord Jesus. Come into our world, oh come now, Lord Jesus.
Hello, my name's Ben Gilbert, and welcome to the first of the mini podcast series we are releasing for the International Development Week. Today we start off by focusing on international mission support. I've asked Francine, who manages mission support for our team, to explain what this involves. Unfortunately, the sound quality wasn't great during our call, one of the issues with working remotely these days, but I hope you can still understand what we were speaking about. Hi Francine, thanks for coming on to this mini podcast series for the International Development Week.
You're welcome, it's good to be here.
So your role in SED UK is to support all our international mission support projects. Financially, this is probably the largest contribution from the UKI territory for any one area, over £500,000 a year.
Yeah, that's right.
So can you tell me a little bit about mission support and what it involves?
So mission support is primarily to fund the infrastructure of the Salvation Army in those territories that may not have the financial means to fund this with their own locally raised resources. So it normally includes projects such as building maintenance, computer equipment, training for staff and officers, purchases of land and buildings and so on. They're not the most exciting of projects, but essential for the wide work of the Salvation Army to take place.
And which countries or territories are we currently funding mission support projects in?
Mission support is centred around the international mission partners. So these are designated by the international headquarters, and UKI's current mission partners are Pakistan, Ghana, South America East, which is Argentina, Uruguay and Paraguay, Estonia, which is part of the Finland territory, and Greenland, which is part of Denmark territory.
So why is it, do you think, that mission support is important for us as a territory to invest our money in and our time and resources?
Well, I alluded to this earlier, but basically it's absolutely essential if we are keen to do community-based programs such as water, food security and anti-trafficking. These community development programs rely on the local Salvation Army having a presence and facilities as well as personnel to be able to implement these projects. This applies to emergency responses too. Mission support funds all the non-glamorous stuff, which we don't often like to write to supporters about. But if we didn't have it, we wouldn't be able to do any of the other important work that the Army does. So it's the kind of behind the scenes and supporting in the background projects, but it actually makes up almost half of the total of the international project funds we send from UKI territory.
Thanks, Francine. You've given us a really great insight into mission support and how important it is. You can find out more information and resources about what we do on our website, www.salvationarmy.org.uk/ID. Follow the links to the International Development Week. Keep an eye out for more podcasts this week, as well as information through our social media channels.
Our
uniforms look all mixed up, it's because we've united 4 different bands from Dalmellington, Kirkintilloch, Newton Grange and West Lothian schools and brought them together to celebrate the centenary of the Scottish Amateur Brass Band Association.
Hello, I'm Ben Gilbert and welcome to another of our mini podcast series we are releasing for the International Development Week. If you have ever wondered about how water is intricately linked to dignity and justice, you need to listen to this as our team member Violet Ruria, who specialises in supporting UKI's international water sanitation and hygiene programs, explains why we should care so much about people having clean water. Violet, I wonder if you could just tell us, what does clean water mean for international development?
Thank you, Ben. We all know that water is very essential for every life. Our bodies and the bodies of all creatures is made of water. And water is a source of life and thus requires us or gives us a responsibility to action by protecting and preserving water and also sharing it for the benefit of all creation. Sadly, 785 million people lack access of water close to their homes. That equates to 1 person in every 10 people do not have accessible water. And lack of water means that women, children, elderly have to spend many hours walking, often in very dangerous paths, spending so many hours in search of water. And they do sacrifice a lot of time, which they could be using together with their energy to invest in other productive activities. And we know that when water is insufficient and when it becomes contaminated, communities suffer from waterborne diseases, which could essentially be prevented. In most communities where there is no water, there is also inadequate sanitation. And that means that communities do not have a safe way to dispose their fecal matters. And they often have to resort to go into the bushes or in the open. And this denies people dignity and privacy. And we know that when there is no adequate sanitation in schools, often the girls are mostly affected because they've got to carry water to their school. And when they are having their menstrual periods, they often have to absent school because they don't have those facilities. And so that's why clean water is very, very critical for international development.
Thank you, Violet. There's a whole host of different reasons why water is so important. But why is it important for us as the UK territory to invest our own resources in water programs which are happening in other territories? Why is that important for us as a territory?
It's very critical because it's about justice. Access to water, clean water, is a human right obligation. And for us as a church, it's also a Christian mandate from God. We find the scriptures very well, Jesus talking in Matthew 25, verse 34, saying that the people who give food to the hungry and water to the thirsty, those are essentially the only people who are to be considered as followers of Christ. And for us, that's very paramount, that we are walking we are obeying God's command, providing water to the thirsty. It is also an issue of championing justice, ensuring that no one is left behind in terms of accessing safe, clean water. And the Sustainable Development Goal number 6 is very clear. It stipulates that we need to work to ensure that all human beings have access to clean water and sanitation. And we are part of that, championing that no communities, especially the poor and marginalized, are left behind in acquiring clean water.
Now, we don't have enough time to go into the details of every project and program that we're funding, but can you just give us a brief overview of the different countries and territories that we're partnering with for clean water?
Currently, we have teams working in Kenya, in the arid regions. We also have work in DRC, Zimbabwe, Nigeria, Mali, and Burkina Faso. And in all these countries, our programs are empowering communities to plan, manage, and sustain their water sources. And we support the communities to improve their local water sources, which could be supporting them to drill boreholes, shallow wells, protect their natural springs, construct sand dams, or increase rainwater harvesting systems so that they have adequate water.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Violet, so much for coming on and sharing that with us. You can find out more information and resources about what we do on our website, www.salvationarmy.org.uk/ID. Follow the links to the International Development Week. Keep an eye out for more podcasts this week, as well as information through our social media channels. Thanks for listening. Hello and welcome to Develop, the mini-series that we're releasing over the International Development Week. I'm Ben Gilbert, and today we are focusing on food security. I talked to Captain Ben Cottrell, who's been working with our team in international development over the last year and focusing on the programs that we have around this theme. Well, thanks, Ben. Thanks for spending some time on this mini podcast series for International Development Week. Good to have you here. I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about food security and what that involves.
Sure. Food security, as defined by the United Nations, is where people have access to sufficient, safe and nutritious food that meets their food preferences and their dietary needs to have an active and healthy life. So basically there's three categories for everyone in the world. You're either food secure. That's those of us that might be fortunate, those who are listening, who have enough quality and quantity of food. You'd be food secure. Then there's moderately food insecure people, and those are just people who have problems and uncertainties of obtaining food. And then the last category is severe food insecurity, and that might be people who haven't eaten in days, might be experiencing food poverty in that way, or even famine.
And so we are supporting various different food security projects around the world as the Salvation Army. What are the countries that we're partnering with at the moment?
Well, yeah, to be clear, the wider Salvation Army are working right across the world, from the UK, the USA. Higher income countries are also dealing with food insecurity in food banks and community meals, etc. But for us in Salvation Army international development work, particularly for the UK, we're involved predominantly with food security actually in the continent of Africa. So I could give a few examples. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, we work through the local Salvation Army, partnering with communities to reintroduce actually edible insects, yes, edible and nutritious insects into the habitat of rural communities. In Mali and Burkina Faso in West Africa, we're supporting communities to make the best use of their land by increasing their forest cover and improve the health of their soils. So farmers are better equipped basically to overcome malnutrition and to lift themselves out of poverty. I could talk about Zimbabwe, investing in farmers there and helping them to produce plentiful crops to ensure food security. I could talk about some other training projects. A really interesting, exciting one we're developing at the moment is in Angola, to develop a project to train farmers to grow high quality avocados, which will improve their food security, their food nutrition, but also increase their income, which can really kind of impact the whole of the livelihoods and the prospects for farmers and their families.
And today as well, we're highlighting the Helping Hand campaign, which will be launching next year, which is all about food security. It is called Feeding Hope. And lastly, Ben, you've told us a little bit about what food security is, a little bit about where we're working in food security. For you, why is it important that as the Salvation Army, we invest our resources in this theme, in food security?
Sure. Well, for decades, actually, the number of people who are food insecure has actually been declining, which has been great, but it actually isn't true anymore. A couple of years ago, it actually started to rise. We're now more than 820 million people do not have enough food to eat. And this trend just turned just before COVID in 2020, and I have no doubt that this is now exacerbating the situation. COVID actually is really causing economic downturn across many parts of the world, but really impacting the global south. It's seeing rise of unemployment, declining wages and incomes, and it's basically challenging people's access to food and essential services that they need to live a healthy lifestyle. So actually 2020, ironically, in one way, was supposed to be a year of progress on nutrition and food systems for the world. But the last few years and COVID, the pandemic, have really challenged every facet of life. So in one way, it's never been more important. We've got a huge task. The stats are going the wrong way, unfortunately, now. So we have to redouble our efforts and really think, how can we work longer term to deal with food insecurity? Because lots of our colleagues, actually, their heads have had to be necessarily turned to dealing with people who have no food now. Instead of developing projects or running projects that might yield influence in or impact in a year or two or more, they're now actually having to feed people who have no food right now. So it's having a huge impact on food security across the world. So it's great that we're able to highlight that next year in our Helping Hands.
Thanks, Ben. And I think that's where food security and our emergency response is so critical to work hand in hand together, particularly during times of crisis. Well, thank you very much, Ben, for spending some time on this mini podcast and giving us a short insight into what food security means and what we're involved with around the world. Thanks for your time. You can find more resources about food security that you can download from our website, www.salvationarmy.org.uk/ID. Follow the links to the International Development Week webpage from there. As always, you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and you can always subscribe to our upcoming podcasts. Thanks for listening. Hello and welcome to another of our mini-series Develop podcasts that we're releasing over the International Development Week. My name is Ben Gilbert and today I am speaking to Violet, who supports income generation programs that we're partnering with other territories in several countries across the world. Violet, thank you so much for coming on the mini podcast series for the International Development Week. I wonder if you could tell us, what does income generation mean for international development?
Thank you, Ben. Income generation is very key for international development work. We do know the statistics that currently we live in a world that sadly 2.5 billion people lack access to formal financial services. And sadly, most of these are women and the youth who are in most developing countries. Through our income generation program, we give families the opportunity to earn a living and support themselves with a sense of dignity. We support families and communities to form small saving and loans groups. And the groups are made of 15 to 25 self-selected members who agree to come together, start by learning financial literacy, gain skills on saving, and gain tools on doing small businesses. And this helps them and gives them an opportunity to realize their dreams of earning an income for their households. The groups come together and agree to meet frequently and pool their resources. And once their resources start growing, their capital base starts growing, they are able to start providing small loans to each other. And the members elect their leaders. So it's a self-managed bank, as we would say, and they formulate a constitution, a set of rules on what they need to do as members, their obligations, how much in terms of interest rates they need to be charging, often very low margins. And they also agree on how each member would benefit. And because of this, the groups are empowered to not only lead themselves, but also to gain skills, leadership skills, just to acquire their self-esteem, that they can realize their dreams, which is very critical in overcoming poverty. And oftentimes the groups provide a safety net where the members can fall back to in terms of when they need or when they face life shocks. For instance, if they have a huge medical bill, they can turn to the group and get some little money and address that need. It could be when one is bereaved and they need some support, and the group is there to provide those support. And also, income generation is very critical in international development work because it enables the communities, it empowers the individuals to gain some livelihood skills. If the opportunity was not there, they would not gain these livelihood skills. And these skills are very useful in ensuring that the families are able to earn an income.
Thank you, Violet. We do invest our resources from the UK in clean water, anti-trafficking, and several other major thematic areas. Why do you think it's so important for us to invest our resources in income generation programs?
Yes, Ben, thank you. It is very vital that we invest in income generation activities because this is one of the programs that empowers people. It helps people work their way out of poverty. It gives them the skills and the ability and the capacity and just the encouragement that they need to pursue their dreams. And in every human being, irrespective of where they live, they do have dreams. And it also gives dignity to the family that they can be able to earn a living themselves. They don't have to depend on external support to feed their families. And so this income generation, it journeys with the families. It encourages the family to realize and to believe that they are able to solve their problems, to earn a decent income, and also to protect their community. And for me, this increases the resilience of the individuals to withstand whatever shock that life throws to them.
Which territories are we currently partnering with for income generation?
We are investing in working with farmer groups in Malawi. We are also working with families in the informal settlements of Nairobi in Kenya. We're also starting to work with some groups in Angola and also in Tanzania and in Bangladesh.
Well, Violet, thank you so much for coming on and taking some of your time to tell us about this theme, income generation. If you're interested in finding out more about this theme, you can always check out our website www.salvationarmy.org.uk/ID. You can also download the At Home with Income Generation resource that we've got specially for International Development Week. Thanks for listening.
You have loved me with such perfect love. Fathered me with such a tender touch. Your faithfulness surrounds my soul. Your mercy lifts my head. How can I repay all you have done? Father me, faithful Father, Father me. No one else could ever be the perfect Father God to me. You now clothe me with your righteousness. Hide me in the shadow of your wings. And even in my darkest days, your light will guide my way. Hallelujah to the King of praise. Father me, faithful Father, Father me. No one else could ever be the perfect Father God to me. Father me, faithful Father, Father me. No one else could ever be the perfect Father God to me.
Hello and welcome back to our International Development Week mini-series for the Develop podcast. My name's Ben Gilbert. Today we are focusing on anti-trafficking and modern slavery, and I'm speaking with Anne Gregora, who is part of our team in SED UK. I've asked Anne to spend a few minutes explaining what our work of anti-trafficking means and looks like across the world. And thank you so much for speaking to us as part of the International Development Week. I wonder if you could start off by telling us a little bit about what anti-trafficking theme means to us in the UK and what it involves.
Sure. Hi, Ben. It's great to be here today, and I'm really excited to be sharing on this mini podcast series. For us, the anti-trafficking response in SED UK really involves three things. Firstly, it's support for projects around the world that have identified trafficking as an issue in their communities and they have some way in which they want to respond. Secondly, for us, it's about being on top of and contributing to evidence-based practice by being a part of key networks with organisations from around the UK and the world. And we believe that this is part of our responsibility as a support territory to gather this information and then to share it widely. And then thirdly, a key role for us is supporting the international modern slavery and human trafficking response strategy, and particularly through the development of communities of practice in Africa, South America, South Asia, and South Pacific and East Asia. And these communities of practice are essentially about bringing together of nominated national contact persons in each territory, command and region who are the main point of contact for responding to trafficking.
And why is it necessary for us to invest our resources in anti-trafficking?
Sure. I'm actually going to borrow from someone else to answer this question. So I listened to a brilliant interview with the General and Commissioner Peddle, who are the international leaders of the Salvation Army yesterday, and they actually beautifully outlined our global commitment and call to fight trafficking on an international level. And I really would encourage everybody to watch it because it is a call to arms for the entire Salvation Army to fight trafficking. And it's available on the ISJC website, and maybe, Ben, you could provide a link. So this is a global fight now for all of us, and everyone's got a role to play. And the Salvation Army has been involved in the campaign for social justice since it began. And human trafficking is a grave injustice. It removes the value of a person and creates them as a product. Ben, no one should be removed from their families against their will. No one should be denied their freedoms. No one should be forced to work most of the day, to be starved, to be beaten, to be raped, and in some cases to be killed for profit. It's just something that we can't accept is okay in our world. And even though this is really bleak, the reality is that trafficking thrives because of other injustices like poverty, lack of employment, gender inequality, or lack of education. So we can do things about this, and through prevention projects that address root causes of trafficking, we can make a difference. And through protection projects, we can restore dignity and life in all its fullness for people that we work with. And then we also have to invest resources here in the UK, and we do that through SED UK. So we invest resources in awareness raising here because trafficking also relates directly to us. And depending on the clothes that we buy or the food that we consume, or if we watch pornography, it influences whether people around the world are exploited or not. And we can very easily ourselves have a prevention role through lifestyle change.
That's really great. Thank you so much, Anne. Anne, if you can just give me a quick list of all the countries we're currently involved with from the UK territory. Who are we partnering with?
Okay, sure. If we're looking just at the project work, we're currently working in Europe and working with Russia, Poland and Ukraine, and they're predominantly for prevention of trafficking projects. In Africa, we're working with the Salvation Army in Tanzania, Malawi, Uganda, Ghana and Nigeria, and this is a mix of protection and prevention projects. And then in South Asia and SPEAR, we work with India, Eastern Nepal and the Philippines, and again that's a mixture of prevention with communities and protection of survivors.
And this year's Helping Hands campaign is Unseen Promise. It's all about anti-trafficking, isn't it? So if people listening to this want to contribute to the work that you're involved with our partners around the world, they can fundraise or donate to the Helping Hand campaign on our website. Thanks, and thanks so much for spending time with us, and we'll speak to you soon.
Brilliant. Bye.
If you'd like to find out more, there is loads of information on our website, www.salvationarmy.org.uk/ID. You can follow the links to the International Development Week webpage, and there you can find resources for anti-trafficking and modern slavery, as well as all our themes around international development. Thanks for listening. Welcome back to our mini podcast series we're releasing over the International Development Week. Thanks for listening. Today we focus on our work of gender justice. You only have to pick up a newspaper to see all forms of gender violence everywhere. So what is it exactly, and how do we help stop it? I've asked Tribeni Gurung, who works with SED UK, to unpack this theme a little bit more for us. Tribeni, thank you so much for meeting with us this week on the International Development Week. It's great to have you here and talk about gender justice, which is a theme that we're working in SED UK. I wonder if you could start off just by telling us a bit about gender justice and what that involves.
Thanks, Ben, and thank you for having me. So just to reflect on your question on gender justice, over the years, we have recognized that gender justice is part of a bigger global inequality and social justice issue. And for us, it's been quite significant. So over the last few years, we as SED UK, we have also expanded our support as well to include projects that address forms of gender violence. So, for example, domestic or intimate partner violence, female genital mutilation, early child marriage, or women exploited in the sex trade. The issue is, however, is that despite the fact that violence seems as if it has and will always be present, there also has to be systems in place that can actually prevent or limit it. So gender justice for us in SED UK involves working with both men and women, also working with girls and boys in order to find solutions to forms of gender violence around the world as well as in the communities that we work in.
Thanks, Tribeni. I wonder if you could just give us a quick overview of where we're working in this theme. Which countries are we currently involved in?
Yeah, sure. So at the moment, SED UK, we are working with a gender framework, and this currently has two aspects. The first is gender mainstreaming, and this consists of integrating gender equality in all of our projects. And the second aspect is addressing gender-based violence, and this is mainly in communities which have been negatively impacted by the issue. So for instance, in Argentina, we are working through a local court in order to run a group therapy program for women who may have experienced domestic violence. And as part of this program as well, we are working with children, and this is to prevent them from learning violent responses. Also in Argentina, we are supporting those who live in homes where there has been some form of violence. And in Bangladesh, we have an outreach program for women who may have been trafficked into brothels for sexual exploitation and forced prostitution. So with these women, we are working with them in order to empower them by educating them on their rights, including on things like gender equality and women's rights. We're also working with the local community, and here we're educating them on gender justice issues in the hope that this would reduce the stigma and ignorance that we normally find towards sexually exploited and trafficked women of the local communities.
So you've given us a really good insight into what it involves and where we're working, but there are so many different needs out there and we only have limited resources. So why is it necessary for us to invest our resources in gender justice? Why is it so important?
That's a great question, Ben. It's necessary for us to invest our resources in gender justice because gender justice, it often involves gender-based violence. In most cases, we usually find this is violence against women and girls. And the threat of such violence, it's usually implemented through individuals as well as community and institutions. And this can be in both formal and informal ways. So I've given some examples of gender justice issues and gender-based violence examples, but just to reiterate, this can include things like intimate partner violence, early marriage, FGM and honour killings. Gender-based violence is also usually practiced as a result of power inequalities, usually stemming from gender roles, and this can actually harm a woman's physical, emotional, psychological and social well-being over the course of her life. In the communities that Said UK work in, we find that there are violations of women and girls' human rights, and this has had a negative impact on their ability to participate in, as well as contribute to and benefit from development. And similarly, often the communities we work in, gender inequality is usually expressed through patriarchy or male dominance. And this is often maintained in gender norms and values present in a particular society or community. So it's necessary for us to invest our resources in gender justice, as it's a complex theme and it can be quite sensitive as well. And we need to make sure that our projects and our work are addressing the root causes and not just the expressions of violence. And finally, we need to be able to invest in the area so that everyone has equal life chances, as well as opportunities which will ultimately and hopefully can lead to stronger and integrated communities.
Thanks so much, Treveni. It's great having you on this mini podcast series, and thank you so much for giving us an insight into gender justice, what it means, and what we're doing around the world. You can learn more about the work that we do in gender justice on our website, www.salvationarmy.org.uk/ID. You can follow the links to the International Development Week webpage, which gives you a whole host of resources to do over this week with your friends and your family at home or wherever you are. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for our podcast tomorrow.
If I